All right. Hello, everybody. This is Luke Stokes, and I'm here with Randy Henkin of Seasteading Institute. We met actually not too long ago. I guess it'd be just a handful, about a little over a month ago, at the Tulip Conference out in San Francisco, and it was kind of an interesting experience. It was kind of like meeting one of your heroes, somebody that has made something possible that you've been dreaming about for many years. And what we're talking about is the Seasteading Institute, and for many years, I've been very excited about that concept. So before I continue and dive into that, Randy, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it.
Luke, it's a pleasure to have the chance to speak with you again. And I was equally delighted to bump into you at the after party there at the Tulip Conference, and then to see your eyes light up. And I really enjoy that experience. It's one of the things that makes me thrive in this project of trying to build seasteads and bring it into the world, is knowing that there are these thousands of people around the world like yourself who are infatuated with the idea.
Oh, it's so true. And I completely relate to that, because when you just hear someone who you've never met before, you've never known, and they just come out of nowhere and say, hey, I've followed all your stuff, I've read your blogs, or I've followed your work you do, and it matters. Just hearing that feedback, it's like, that's what we really work so hard for. It's just knowing that what we're doing matters to the world and makes a difference. Yeah. Definitely. I'll just share a little bit of my story of why I'm excited about what you're doing. And then we'll lead into kind of you giving your backstory of how you got involved and what it means to you. And then we can lead into also the ICO that you guys are doing, which is something I want to tell people about because I want to see more people supporting it. So essentially, to back up to the story, I myself kind of got involved in the concept of voluntarism, this basic idea that no human being has the right to rule over or own another human being, that all human interactions should be voluntary. And the more I look into things like democide and these other historical ways that nation state governments haven't really treated human beings very well, I got very passionate about alternate methods of governance and how potentially human beings could move more towards a voluntary society. And the more I looked into how we could possibly do this, and it kind of starts as philosophical discussions about morality and ethics and virtue and what makes sense, what actually works, how our species thrives on autonomy, all this kind of stuff. But then my friends would rightfully say, well, show me it working, right? Like, show me it in the real world. This is all nice philosophical masturbation until you can actually point to it, where I can actually experience it. And that was something I've always thought about as I was thinking through these ideas. And there weren't many places I could point to on the map to say that's a place on the planet where human beings are doing this and it's functioning very well. And when I learned about Seasteading Institute, I got very excited about a potential place where I could kind of point my skeptic friends and say, hey, look, voluntarism can work. We don't have to have threats of violence essentially to keep human beings in a line. The economic incentives and all these other properties can work very well. And so I kind of followed the website, got on the mailing list and started watching some of the videos that you were in. And so I'd recognized your face and it was just kind of, the beard and everything else changed it a little bit. It was like, oh wait, that's the guy. And that was fun to kind of put two and two together. But in a nutshell, as far as my understanding, Seasteading Institute and what you guys are doing with Blue Frontiers is trying to create an environment where people can create new methods of governance floating out on the ocean in international waters that aren't necessarily controlled by the existing governance models of nation states. And that allows for new ways of doing things and testing of competing currencies and competing governance models and all kinds of very fascinating things that I really think our species is in need of and desires in order to progress forward. And so I'm very, very excited about this idea that we can try some new things with what you guys are offering. So that's kind of my kind of backstory of why I'm excited about what you're doing. I just selfishly want a place I can point to be like, see, look, I'm not crazy. There's a place where it's happening right now, and we can all participate and help support it. That's my thought process. But I'd love to know more about your involvement, how you kind of got started with this idea, and what of what I said is accurate, and what would you clarify?
Well, no, you have a very accurate, understanding of where we want to see, the future of seasteading go. Over the course of this conversation, I'll describe more of the roadmap to get there. But first, for me, I was invited to join the Seasteading Institute in 2011. I was an activist leading another nonprofit as a communication director. The Seasteading Institute was looking for a communication director. I got an email about it and said, this is a life-changing opportunity. I mean, I totally want to get in on it. And I hadn't been that exposed to, all the ideas of liberty yet. I grew up in the Midwest in a blue-blooded, Democratic family, and was raised in a way that just always assumed or was taught that people on the other side of the aisle were evil, right? And one of the biggest personal growing experiences from joining the Seasteading Institute was being exposed to these people who I was taught were evil. And over time, pretty quickly, like realizing this isn't a bad person at all. They just have a different viewpoint than these other people happen to have. And then I also became really disenchanted with this idea that, when you stand in your tribe, and I was in the blue tribe, like the government is great just so long as we control it.
Yes, exactly. As long as our tribal chieftain gets to control the tribe, everybody's happy, right? Yeah. And the solution is usually more government that we get to control.
Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden they're really upset when the other tribe has it. But somehow they still believe that the government's going to be great. Yeah. And I kind of eventually came to this conclusion that you can't have both. You have to, if you're going to be pro-government and you're going to be pro, this version of democracy, then you have to accept that, hey, it's Donald Trump's turn, right? Yeah. And I'm not very happy about it being Donald Trump's turn.
I don't think any of us are, but yeah.
So that was, a personal growing experience for it. I'm in this major point. We're doing our token generation now. I've been all around the world trying to raise funds for this. There's, as I said, thousands of people that want to participate. Just yesterday, I was talking to a major fund about, buying into our sale. And one of the questions they asked, why do you want to do this? And for me, at this point, it's really an allegiance to people like yourself, where, since 2011, I took over the Seasteading Institute in 2012. I've been, shepherding the money and the hopes of people who want to see seasteading come into reality. And I just take that very seriously. So there's lots of other cool things about seasteading to me. Yeah, in the technology that's going to happen, and being in an awesome tropical place, kind of like the picture you're standing in front of today.
Yeah, actually, I took this picture myself in Costa Rica. Like, that's why this background is so meaningful to me. Other people are like, man, these people in the crypto space, why do they use these cheesy backgrounds? I'm like, I don't care what y'all think. It's meaningful to me. I was on a balcony and I took this shot, and it's meaningful. But yeah, the whole idea of being in paradise, like life is too short. Let's do it if we can,
Right. Yeah. So there's these people all around the world, international, who are attracted to this idea for various reasons. And many of them, like the core base, probably did come out of the liberty movement. Patri Friedman was the founder of the Seasteading Institute. Peter Thiel was the first funder. Patri is from the lineage of David Friedman, who wrote The Machinery of Freedom. Lineage of Milton Friedman, who the first major economic advocate of the free markets in the United States, at least. So that's the base of support. But then, as we've, proceeded to communicate about the project in a wider audience, even from the time Patri started the Seasteading Institute, it was never meant as to be only a place for exclusively anarcho-capitalists to go escape to.
That's interesting. I actually wasn't aware of that. I kind of always associated it with the anarcho-capitalist mindset, and so it's going to be open to everything. It sounds. That's interesting.
I mean, our goal is to spark as many experiments as possible.
Nice.
And we'll start with the first one, and we know who the base of support is for the first one, but we believe that innovation comes through experimentation, evolution comes through experimentation. People should have more choice. If all the blue-blooded people want to go live together, they should have the right to do that. And they want to live in a communist, tribe, they should have the right to do that. And
I love that. It's actually one of the things I love the most about the anarcho-capitalist mindset is that it's free to let other people do their own thing as long as you don't kind of tread on my, take away my self-ownership, then you can go ahead and do a great thing. And the funny thing is, I genuinely believe if something works really well, like maybe this kind of future of a collaborative commons may be something that we move towards. Maybe the version of a capitalist environment that we've been in changes when you come towards a more, zero marginal cost society. Maybe there are some new methods that are going to work. And I generally think that those who respond to market signals, like anarcho-capitalists generally do, will be open to those and say, oh, hey, that works better. Yeah, we'll adopt that and we'll use that too. So it's very encouraging to hear that, because I do think that those who are really serious about liberty are free to let other people do things in ways that they disagree with, as long as human well-being isn't being harmed, and that's kind of the goal. If a group of people can live a certain way and they're not harming anyone else, then that's fantastic.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And, I just think that, unfortunately, 193 nations rule the world. There's supposedly some experimentation between states, and there's some movements in charter cities, but there's it's a very limited choice for the 7 billion plus people on the planet. You have more choice in ice cream when you go to the grocery market.
And to me, one of the most important things is it's an involuntary choice. It's based on your point of birth, which is completely random. And I'm glad you mentioned charter cities. That was another thing that I would point to say, oh yeah, well, we got Seasteading Institute and we got charter cities. Like this is all we really got going for us right now. But ultimately, it's kind of this reverse choice. It's not really a contract, because it was just, well, I happen to be born here and I happen to get this genetic lottery and this is where I'm at. Where do I go from here? I love the idea that we're going to eventually, if you guys succeed, and I hope you do, we're going to have these real voluntary contracts where people can agree to say, kind of like a homeowners association, I live where I do because I voluntarily agreed to abide by these levels of governance, and I also have a mechanism for participating in them. So one thing I like about your upcoming token, from what I've been able to gather from the white paper, is you're also considering governance. And that's a big part of Steam. The Steam blockchain is a delegated proof of stake, and also what I've been involved in with EOS DAC and the EOS blockchain. A lot of these kind of on-chain governance systems are coming because people recognize all these projects have governance. All these cryptocurrencies do. Some of them are just more transparent than others. So I like that you're thinking already, as far as my understanding, is that the token holdership will give them a level of governance as well that, again, is a voluntary contract. And that's very exciting to me. This, I think, is the future.
Yeah. Why don't I'm going to start out in 2050 and paint the picture.
Nice, yeah.
And then we'll walk back to 2018 and how we're going to get there in the next few years, and what this our Varyon, our token, actually will do. The big vision of Seasteading is that we all get to live in mobile floating homes. Our businesses float, our homes float. They're interchangeable. And if you don't like your neighbor, you can move to the other side of the neighborhood. And if you don't like your government, you sail to the government that you do like.
That's so cool.
Creates, government as a service provider rather than a monopoly that owns you, where some set of 50.1% of people can change the rules on you, midstream of the game.
I just get so excited. I want that on a T-shirt. My government should be a service provider, not an owner.
Yeah, I would like to see that too. And in these worlds, if people said it, if they want the communist seasteads, they can totally sail out to that one and participate in it. In the challenge to get there is open ocean seasteading is very expensive with current technologies. So the current technology to be out in the open ocean and to be comfortable and safe is either a really big ship or an oil rig style platform, something that's above the water. The future of these floating cities will be some kind of combination where you are ballasted, so you can have an oil rig will have 3, 4, 5 columns that will hold up a big platform, and they'll be many meters above the water, and the water goes underneath it, and this thing is solid. Back in the 50s, they built a thing called the flip ship. They tow out this big tube, ballast it, it tips like this. There's a house on top. It's just a pencil floating in the water. Waves are going past it. You're drinking coffee inside, no problem. If you're on a little yacht, even on a big yacht, you're bouncing up and down those waves.
Oh yeah, I spent 2 years living on a boat in high school, and so I've experienced with all of that. Yeah, it would definitely make things a little more challenging if you're on a small boat even a dock, even if it's got a pylon, it's still going up and down.
Yeah. So the future of floating cities will be some combination of being able to manufacture these modular points that can connect together and sail between each other and still be stable in the open ocean, that can still be resistant to major storms out in the open ocean, but could be affordable to a middle income or lower income family, because we're able to mass produce them, 3D print them, use materials like nanocarbon fibers for cheaper than what's available today, and also in the future, probably just a few years from now, we can expect that satellite internet connection will have increased, that the possibilities of growing lab grown meats will have increased, harvesting energy from waves will has been perfected, and we won't have to be on the fossil fuel system, and it will be reasonable for millions of people to live out at sea. Today there are still tens of thousands that live at sea. They live on the oil rig. They live on ships. There's always ships transporting back and forth, but there's no community to point to specifically at sea that is doing what I would call seasteading. And what I would call near-term seasteading is some combination of living at sea and having some version of self-rule. So what we expect in the next 5 years isn't going to be a completely sovereign city. It'll be a deal. It'll be a charter city, basically. So in 2000,
is this kind of the relationship you've had where you have to get Polynesia or some of these other host nations to kind of sponsor the project to get it started, kind of a deal?
Exactly. So when the Seasteading Institute was started as a think tank, and we did a bunch of research about the open ocean, and eventually concluded, it's technologically feasible. It's just economically not really possible. It's not achievable unless we get some random set of billionaires to come in and and build billion-dollar cities. How do we do this for tens of millions of dollars instead of billions of dollars? And so why don't we marry the seasteading idea with the startup societies idea or the charter city idea? We go pitch host nations, ask them to allow us to build sustainable floating seasteads, floating islands behind, in protected water. So we could be in a harbor or a reef break, atoll, a lagoon, someplace where we're basically dealing with lake-style water, not open ocean water. The trade is we offer that country economic activity that otherwise wouldn't come there. We bring environmental benefits because we are, in our core concerned about the ocean and wanting to treat it well. We bring brain power that a lot of these places have brain drain. And in exchange for that, we say we're not asking for your money. Most times they, hotel goes into some place like, hey, we want major kickbacks. We want you to pay for this and pay for that.
I was actually going to ask that question related to the economic activity, because usually those kickbacks are designed based on a tax system that's already in place. And I know a lot in the freedom movement, they, in my opinion, rightfully describe taxation as extortion, as a form of theft. So I would imagine you guys probably wouldn't be on board with something similar to that. So that economic activity, does that directly benefit the host nation in some type of tax situation, or how is that structured?
So, our ask is don't tax us, and we won't ask you for services that,
It's almost so simple to be ridiculous, right?
Yeah, we'll pay for the services that we use.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be fair, right? It wouldn't be fair to go in and say, okay, well, we're going to use your airport and your medical care, but we're not going to pay for it. We have to find a way.
The few unique situations on the globe where you can legitimately say we're not using anything. We are completely self-sustainable, and we're not using your roads. I have a T-shirt that says "My roads." We're not using any of that. It's just we're just going to exist. That's really interesting.
Right. So there'll be plenty of benefit for them, though, right? Like if you're out in a small island population that has only survives on some tourism, most likely. And now we have hundreds of people coming through regularly who are reasonably well off. Now they're using that airport. They're buying goods and services from local vendors. So there's a lot of the more astute government people we've had our diplomacy with get that. They're like, well, we have a choice here. Either we say no because we feel upset that they don't want to be taxed, or we say yes and we get income because otherwise they're not going to come.
Yeah,
it's a win-win situation for them.
Nice.
So last year, in 2016, or let me start back a little farther. In 2013 is when I decided we should do a floating island project, post-nation style seasteads. We did a bunch of research on it. We had a good shot, and we tried to take to Central America. That didn't work out for us. And then in 2016, we were invited by the president of French Polynesia to come and make a proposal to them. In 2017, we signed an agreement with them. It's when we signed that agreement that we started the new company, Blue Frontiers, to actually build the first seasteads. So Blue Frontiers took about $1 million in seed funding. We spent that money on some obligations we had to the government of French Polynesia, such as economic reports, environmental reports, legal reports about how they could develop this. Basically, our term for it's a sea zone. We're modeling a special economic zone, and
so to back up, so I understand it. The Seasteading Institute was a think tank that once you got an actual agreement out of this research that formulated into an instance of what you want to accomplish, that's when Blue Frontiers was incorporated and created. And now you're actually going forward to producing something. And the Varyon token and that relationship is relationship to this very first one that you're trying to accomplish. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. Very correct. So, we started our process of trying to raise funds through the sale of Varyon, and we've come up with a really neat token model that I think that people in the cryptosphere will really appreciate. The token is used for two things. One, it's used for buying our major assets in an auction process. So when we build our first seastead, if we either sell the whole thing or sell condos on it, we'll do it in a blinded second bid auction process with a minimum price. The minimum price would be set so that we can't sell it for less than it really cost us to build it. Gotcha. And that way we can't crash the price of Varyon. So we're minting 1 billion Varyon. That's all there'll ever be. And by setting that minimum price, we're protecting the buyers, so they're the holders of it. So we're not selling it all to somebody for cheaper than we brought in.
Yeah.
By doing the second bidder auction method, it means that you as a buyer would never pay more than your maximum willingness to pay. So you should be encouraged to say, this thing is worth this much to me, and that's what I'm going to pay for it. And if you're the highest bidder, you're going to pay the second highest bidder.
Yeah, the second. That's what I remember reading about. Yeah. It's a very cool model.
Yeah. So, this is what, Google does this for ads, and it seems to be a pretty reasonable way of finding fair market value for things. The other, perhaps more interesting way that Varyon will be used is for staking. So in our version of staking, people will stake their residence. They'll stake their residence, ownership, or presence in the sea zone. So if you own a seastead, if you're visiting a seastead, if you're a renter of a seastead, you would have to put down a certain amount of Varyon to stake that you're there. That would mean that a supply of Varyon is limited, because the bigger we get and the more that's staked, the less Varyon is available to be distributed around. But it also means that it acts as a general liability. So if you were to do something that violated the community's rules, harm somebody, we would have this staked Varyon to be used to take out.
Yeah, I love that aspect of it. The idea that you have to put up a bond, you have to have skin in the game if you're going to go and use resources, especially if you're renting from another owner. This is just, I think, a beautiful model for protecting property that I've seen work. And it's, again, you got skin in the game. You're going to treat that place nicely. It's like your cleaning deposit, right? You want to get it back.
Right. Exactly. And then the other part about it is that it allows you to have referenda. So the way we've designed this currently is that owners or visitors, each are in their own pool, and they would have the power to veto decisions made by the Blue Frontiers or the C-Zone administrators.
Wow, very interesting. So you've separated those interests out, because oftentimes the owners and the renters have a conflict with each other, but then there's a third party that is the kind of overarching organization that's kind of defining this stuff as well. That's a really beautiful model that would then keep each other in check, that they can actually say, we're all going to work forward, try to find some kind of Nash equilibrium, some kind of benefit that everybody agrees to via our token holdership. That's our kind of stake in the game, to say we have the most to lose if this all goes bad because we're token holders. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and even more so, what we can do is we can weight somebody's stake, so that we can do it in a way so that we can't have, we can prevent there being one rich guy that owns everything and makes all the decisions. But we can also make it so that, if you're an owner, you've been there for 5 years, you're not going to get, overpowered by a set of renters that have been there for a month.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah. So I imagine there's some type of reputation system that you guys are going to be building that allows, because I use this analogy often when people talk about, well, I want one person, one vote. And I said, well, yeah, I do too. That's a nice model, but it has some drawbacks in terms of, I don't want my gardener doing my open heart surgery, right? I want the most talented individual for that category in that context to have the most say in how that process goes down. So I want the structural engineer to be the guy who his vote matters when we're talking about a structural engineering concern with the floating city in the C-Zone, more so than the guy who's just like, well, I just want to go and have fun on the weekend. Like, let me party the way I want to. Like, who cares about the building, right? So that's very interesting.
Investigated much about the ideas of liquid democracy?
Yeah, it's somewhat related. Yeah.
Yeah. So the notion that you would give your vote to somebody who is an expert on something to vote on your behalf. We have a strategic alliance with Zencash, and Zencash is implementing a liquid democracy model in their governance models.
And also a lot of the DPoS coins have a similar concept of a proxy. So a couple of days ago, I set myself up as an EOS proxy. I think I've got about 7,000 votes or so for my witness on Steam. And I think the last check someone mentioned there was like 2,000 of those were via proxy. So there were people proxying to my account. And because I vote for myself, then those votes come in as a proxy, along with, I vote for 29 other people that I feel add a lot of value. I think the beauty of that is then you let the people who have the most ability to make the best decisions on who should be involved, they get the weight of their vote goes up, not just based on their own level of financial richness.
A little aside, I just was watching this video, and your viewers could look it up. I think it was a Vice video about a town in Mexico that has evicted the politicians.
Oh, I think I've heard. I definitely want to link to this. I think I've heard about this. Yes,
yeah, it's great. Basically, it's a small town, 20,000 people, but they were bringing in all these, police from elsewhere in the country. They were all corrupt. They were in cahoots with the organized criminals. So the local people kicked out the police, kicked out the politicians. When you drive into the town, they have their own local guards. They've got nail boards down to stop you from coming in. They search you. If you've got a political sticker on your car, they take it off. And then they, the way they do their local administration is each neighborhood has a bonfire, and there's 200 different bonfires.
Wow.
And then from the bonfires, they'll elect, a 12-person committee. And when they do their voting, they all go down to the local park, and they stand in line in front of the person they're voting for. And that way you can literally count they're basically doing an analog version of blockchain.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful. It is fully transparent and available. I definitely am looking forward to seeing this. I definitely want. That's great.
thinking out loud here, it'd be a great place to go down there and teach them how to use the blockchain, and if they can trust how to use it. But that's the whole point, that they don't have a verifiable way. And actually, voting is a very difficult thing, because voting is supposed to be, or at least in the U.S. version, you're supposed to have your anonymity of who you vote for, right? Mm-hmm. So somehow you've anonymously voted, but we have to connect that to the blockchain. It's a very difficult problem to solve.
It is, and there's also a concept called the Sybil attack, where if you don't have a mechanism for making sure that I can't just spin up 10,000 sock puppet voters who then vote in the way I want, I have to have a mechanism for that. And the way that delegated proof of stake does that is your stake influences the impact of your vote. So it would be too expensive to spin up all these other accounts. But even then, when you have certain people that have so much money that, expense is not a concern. And this is a part of this is the problem with not having competing currencies this whole time. When nation states can print money out of nothing, they essentially can game the system no matter what, up until the point where the blockchains push back and say, hey, we have a limit. You can't just buy us all out. Every time you keep trying, our price goes up.
Let me share a few more things. I don't know how long your viewers. I got time, but your viewers might get bored.
Oh no! If you've got time, this is a fantastic conversation. I absolutely. Yeah. If people want to fast forward, they can. But I'm loving this so far. So if you're willing to,
I just want to paint some more of the picture of what we're doing, so that people can have a reasonable expectation. And I enjoy the opportunity to have a long conversation as opposed to it just being somebody getting the headline.
Excellent.
Our roadmap is. We expect to be able to. We're trying to raise 22,000 Ether, and quick math says you can't build a giant city on that. You can build the first seastead with it. So we expect that our first prototype seastead will cost us between $5 and $6 million. And
that's, again, to be clear, that's with existing technologies, or is this projecting some advancements in the next few years?
No, that's with existing technologies.
Cool.
So, people should go and go to blue-frontiers.com, see some of the designs. There's two different designs we're working with. One that's made to look like a floating island. It looks like it's a tropical island, kind of like it would be your background right there. The other one is made more like a modular set of units. But we basically done parametric analyses where we're expecting to build using concrete as our base. So concrete is heavy, it's going to sink. Concrete, it's all about displacement. So if you concrete boats already exist, concrete barges exist. And the nice thing about concrete is it's relatively inexpensive and it can last for thousands of years in seawater.
Are you familiar with Shotcrete at all? I have another connection we could talk about after this call.
Shotcrete, it's where they're one where they're growing put electrical waves into the seawater?
No. Well, my understanding is shotcrete is kind of like a spray-on, similar properties to concrete, where you can 3D print essentially via spray, like over an inflated balloon, for example, and get any form shape you want. I have some connections with a friend of mine who's doing some pretty amazing stuff on that. That's a whole nother conversation. We will definitely get into that, though, because, anyway, continue. Very exciting.
Well, I'll take the moment just to go on a quick tangent, because one of the things that we do plan to do, in addition to building the first seasteads in the water, is to have a land base.
Interesting.
So, we're basically looking for locations where, there's, sparsely populated, so we're not really infringing on anybody that's already there too much, that we can get a piece of land and have a base camp where, because it's going to take us a while to get a full village going at sea. But
so that's kind of like the dock where you'd be delivering supplies and people would be coming. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, okay.
And we plan to basically set up an eco-village there. And we have a team that's working on, basically our base camp. And they're mapping out what's the inexpensive things that we would want to build with in order to have a glamping style environment that's attractive enough for people to come to, but doesn't cost us, many, tens of millions to develop.
I love it. Yeah.
So the shotcrete might fit into that picture. The floating islands, though, we think that we can build. The parametric analysis is a 25 by 25 meter platform with a 3-story building on it that can house 30 people, up to 30 people. Build that for $5 million. We're talking a couple $100,000 per person. is the cost basis of that. Using, again, the floating concrete, marine grade stainless steel, or a a nano carbon fiber style reinforcements on it, rebar.
Yeah.
Then we will be implementing, a gray water, black water system that does not put the water back into the lagoon around us, because we can't pollute our lagoons. We'll use, rain catchment solar panels, floating solar panels around the devices to capture power. We're going to try to avoid using like lead acid battery power, because you don't want that thing sinking, and it only has a 20-year life. And there's some pretty interesting ideas about if you use the extra power you generate during the day when there's sunshine, you could blow up a big balloon underwater.
Wow.
And when the sunshine goes away, the air from that balloon is compressed by the seawater to push a turbine.
That is fantastic. I've not heard that one before. I've heard similar ones where you like crank a weight up and then the gravity brings the weight back down again. But the idea that you have that water pressure underneath you available all the time, and it just, costs energy to inflate that membrane. But yeah, that makes perfect sense. It'll want to collapse again. That's brilliant. I love it.
Yeah. So we have a set of teams that basically are cataloging the various technologies that are available to us. And so we don't have to, invent anything brand new. We have to integrate in a way that's never been integrated before. So there's already floating structure, there's already clean technology, there's already ways to manage wastewater, et cetera. But it's just never been implemented the way we want to implement it. So that's what our teams are working on. After we raise this, the funding, we'll use the funds for about 1 year of engineering and then 2 years to build. So the money we will have will go to that. It'll be used for the diplomacy to finalize a deal with the host nation. And then about a year afterward, we could probably start doing the pre-sales. And then we can generate a revenue stream. And once we can start selling the units, build more units, sell more units, build more units. And hopefully we will never have to do another round of financing again. If we do have to do more financing, we are keeping a 35% of the Varyon supply in a allocation that's for future C-Zone and Seastead construction and administration. But hopefully we don't tap into that. And if we ever were to tap into it, it would be for the benefit of the community. So we see the Varyon holders as part of our community, and we see that the way we've designed this token, that our success should be the success of the community, and everybody can participate in its growth.
That's fantastic. I mean, and actually, it's a lot has happened actually since we met just a month or so ago. We're on the EOS DAC side of things, and I know we talked briefly about distributed autonomous communities and what we're building as a DAC enabler within EOS DAC, and it's really neat to think a lot of what I think we're building, the tooling we're building, will be very beneficial to communities like yourselves, that what you guys are putting together. So as an example, managing those funds, being able to know that the token holders could elect, for example, 12 custodians who'd have a multi-sig on the blockchain access to the account that controls those funds. So then people could have, even time lock delays, different mechanisms of trust that would be based on blockchain cryptographically verifiable proofs, as opposed to just, well, we hope Randy doesn't take off with all the money someday, like that's kind of what we've seen with the Enrons of the past. These people, the legacy systems, they don't have a mechanism to use programmable money, right? They don't have a mechanism to use blockchain technology to ensure a verifiable trust, to say, okay, well, we know that here are all the token holders. They've all voted in these custodians. We can prove that these custodians have this access to these funds, and they have to have a 2/3 + 1 vote to do anything with them. So that's kind of the model. We're building the tooling, the smart contracts, and the dev toolkit, and all the interfaces for this, so that we can run as a DAC ourselves with EOS DAC. But hopefully, many organizations, like hopefully Blue Frontiers and many others, will realize, oh wow, this is how we can provably demonstrate a mechanism for gaining trust from our community so that we wouldn't end up doing anything beyond what we agreed to and committed to, and we can actually program that into our smart contracts. And then access to that is going to be based on, kind of like you were describing earlier, the different stakeholders have different access with their voting of their tokens to control what happens. It's really neat to see all these synergies coming together, that we're in our different ways, we're moving towards, I think, a future we're all seeing. And it's really exciting because it's made possible because of blockchain technology. Yeah, no,
we've been, fellow travelers with the blockchain since the beginning. The Seasteading Institute was founded, within months of the same time of the first Satoshi Nakamoto papers.
That's
and
cool.
I went to the very first Bitcoin conference, and back in the day, I could go there and everybody knew what Seasteading was. It was before a bunch of bankers showed up to get rich. So we do know that we can't predict the future. So we want to build the first pilot project, but we also want to see this replicated all around the world. So while we have this, tentative agreement with the government of French Polynesia, we still have to find the local community there where we'll put the project before we get the legislative action done with them. And meanwhile, we're investigating other places. So, this week already, my team has met with 2 different countries to start conversations. We have this ongoing contest where we're inviting entrepreneurs to help us get into their countries.
Very cool.
To help us set up, these special economic C zones there where it would be, hosts for us. And I'm quite confident the right one will bear fruit to us within the year. So, it could be out in the middle of the South Pacific. It could be someplace in Asia. We will see over the next bit of time. But I'd like to also, I imagine Seasteading as a service. I imagine a world where you could be spending 2 months in the South Pacific and then 2 months in Asia and 2 months in the Mediterranean or something as you travel from one seastead to the next because you bought into some program that does that. And we have a lot of partnerships, especially in the blockchain space. I mentioned Zencash already, Syndicator, Claros. And we are open to I've got 5 co-founders. I've got a total of 19 people that are full-time staff at Blue Frontiers. There are more than 100 professionals that are actively working in some process of the project, whether that's blockchain advisors or people that are really investigating the best ways to put a toilet on a seastead. We have this this whole thing going. But it's not our expertise. Like we don't claim to know the best way to govern yet, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's all going to be an experiment, and we're looking forward to running this experiment with people like yourself. Getting to learn how the EOS DAC could be a tool would be important for us, and maybe it's something that we would want to implement in the first iteration.
Very cool. And also too, just the idea of like Steam and Steemit, a bunch of passionate people, there's now 1 million accounts on the Steam blockchain. And my hope with doing this interview with you and putting this out there is that people can actually participate and be your marketing engine. You can have this kind of decentralized group of people saying, oh man, I want a part of that. I'm going to tell my friends about that. And there's some really, really interesting ideas about how all these things are kind of coming together. You also answered another question I had about the Varyon token, and that this token isn't specific to the Polynesian experiment. It sounds to me that this is the token that will hopefully, if everything goes well, be empowering all these other examples. You mentioned just working with 2 different nations just this week alone. I mean, we're doing this call on a Thursday. That's exciting, So to know that token and investing in that token really, and I say investing, not speculating, because I have no interest in speculation when it comes to this stuff. I think this is a long-term play. I think people who understand this value and have understood it since the beginning, like you said, of the early blockchain revolution, will recognize that this is something that can empower a whole new way for our species to live. And it's just so exciting to me, that potential. There could be many places around the world that will know the Varyon token and be accepting of it. That's very exciting.
But we see Blue Frontiers is still in its early stages. We're only a year old, but the first seastead will be hard, but the third, fourth, fifth one will be a lot easier, and eventually just be commonplace. And we see this a lot like the Tesla Roadster model. You start with something to attract attention, and it's expensive, and eventually you're able to mass produce the common car for the common person. We do want to make it so that the Blue Frontiers has outposts and subsidiaries all around the world, and Varyon is the token that people wish to use in those places.
Very cool. Before we wrap up, do you want to give a little more details on the actual, and you mentioned the number of tokens. Do you want to talk about like the token price for the ICO, the length of the ICO, the minimum cap? Do you want to get into all that, or should we just reference that?
Sure. I can give a quick run on it. We are wrapping up our public pre-sale Saturday night at midnight. Wherever you are, well, it's actually going to be, it's midnight in New Zealand when it wraps.
Yeah, we always try to use UTC time for the DAC because it's just too difficult with people all over the world.
Yeah. So it's Sunday at noon for UTC time.
Okay.
This
okay.
gave everybody the chance to get to their Saturdays.
Excellent.
But the public pre-sale, the minimum buy-in is 1 Ether. 1 Ether gets you 14,750 Varyon. If you buy from 1 to 10 Ether, you get a 5% bonus. If you buy 10 to 40 Ether worth, you get a 10% bonus. And if you buy over 40 Ether worth, you can get a 15% bonus. We're selling everywhere in the world except for China. But in the U.S., we are hamstrung by regulations and are only selling to accredited investors. So people need to acknowledge that they're in the U.S. and then say, I'm an accredited investor, and then we make them jump through some hoops that are a little bit annoying, but it can get done. And then we can sell the token. We do have to lock those tokens for a year.
Yeah, that's a 12-month requirement that I remember hearing about. Yeah.
And
by that meaning people can't go and sell that token prior to those 12 months. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. The public presale will end. Then we will eventually have a main sale. We haven't chosen how soon we're going to open up the main sale yet. As I said, our goal is to raise 22,000 Ether. We've raised, last I checked, we were about 2,300 in the public presale. I have pledges for several millions of dollars in Varyon from some of the funds in China and Silicon Valley right now. Those funds will also get lock-up periods so that they can't pump and dump our token on us. And it's actually it's a pretty interesting world now, the way that the funding has changed, but that's another story. When we reopen for the main sale, the price point, the entry level won't be 1 Ether, will be lower, because there's a lot of grassroots people that will want in at that point. You can do this through Varyon.io, Varyon. Varyon is our play on variation in governance. That's how
I like that. Variation
in
governance.
Yeah. There's an entire there's a whole library of stuff that people can dive into. If they, I assume that Steam listeners, or maybe I'm making an ass of myself by assuming this, but they know how to use Ether. But if not, we have buyer guides.
Oh, I'm sure most of them do, but I have seen your guides and they do seem very well. They walk people through all the details of how to set up the wallet and everything. So that's fantastic. Yeah. And who knows, maybe down the road, we could even have other mechanisms. Maybe they could contribute with Steam. Maybe they could contribute with EOS, just opening it up. But I understand the first goal is just Ethereum works. We got to get people on board. But I'm just super excited about this. And I'm really, really thankful for the time you've given us today. I will definitely include a whole bunch of links to all of this stuff so people can have more information. And it's just super exciting to actually see this thing I've been thinking about and talking about for many years becoming a reality, just to by chance meet you and know that this is becoming a real thing it's very encouraging. I'm very, very excited. And I hope your token cell does phenomenally well.
Thank you, Luke. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me and to share with the people who listen to you. And I look forward to either having a coconut or a beer with you on the Seastead soon.
Yes, absolutely. And it's like I'm convincing my wife that this is a good thing we should be involved in because, hey, maybe someday, we'll have those tokens and we can go visit, right?
Well, I'll end with a little side note on that. We had this conference in Tahiti last May.
Oh, suffering for the cause,
Yeah. Well, and there's like like one of my friends who's been an ambassador for the Seasteading Institute, brought his wife along, and she's like, "Oh, who are all these weird people I'm going to meet in the Seasteading?" And now she's like, "These are the most brilliant, nicest people out, and I'm totally in." And now she wants to be a part of it. And this is my the experience I've had when people take the time to get to know us. I suspect that we can create a lifestyle that your family will be happy to come participate in.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Thank you so much, Randy. I definitely really appreciate your time. And I think conversations like this that are a little more long form give people the ability to do that, to get to know you more personally, to see you not just in a scripted video, but just to see, what makes you smile, to see what gets you excited, to connect with you on that personal level, to understand that what you're doing and the team, not just you obviously, but the team is doing is a really cool thing. So thanks again, and I look forward to publishing this. Hopefully people can get on board before the end of this public pre-sale, and then once the main sale opens up, we'll be talking about it again then too.
Right,
and also to be clear, I didn't get paid anything at all. Like you've not offered me a single thing at all whatsoever to do this. I'm doing this because I'm passionate about supporting you guys. And so I want to make that clear too. There's a lot of people do their yeah, I'll do a video if you pay me or something, but I'm really just about supporting things I'm passionate about. And you guys are definitely on that list.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm glad we didn't have to pay you.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again. And we'll talk again soon as things, maybe we could do like a wrap up in the future. I'd love to know more about this as time goes on.
Absolutely.
All right. Take care.
Bye.